Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're diving into the world of Wallaby Medical Holdings.
Wallaby Medical Holdings.
Yeah, they're making waves in neurovascular devices.
Interesting. Tell me more.
And it looks like Wallaby might be getting ready for like a major transaction.
So in this deep dive, we should try to figure out what's going on with this company.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So who is Wallaby Medical Holdings? What do they do?
They're a really interesting company, actually. They're laser focused on stroke treatments, both hemorrhagic and ischemic. They're a high growth company and could really shake things up.
There are a lot of companies working on stroke treatments. What makes Wallaby different?
They've got this really comprehensive product portfolio, which is unusual in this market. They offer a full suite of devices for treating both types of stroke. Plus, they even have the tools needed to access those really intricate blood vessels in the brain.
So they're kind of a one-stop shop for stroke treatment.
Yeah, exactly. Most companies just specialize in one or two things, but Wallaby does it all.
What are some of their like standout products?
Well, there's their Avenir Coil System, for one. It's designed to treat aneurysms, those weak spots in blood vessels.
Oh, right. This can rupture, which leads to a hemorrhagic stroke.
Exactly. Wallaby's coils are really something. They're known for being really precise, easy to use, and they're great at packing tightly, which is really important for effective treatment.
I can imagine. So what else?
They've also got this really cutting-edge stent retriever called Preset. It's for treating ischemic strokes.
So it helps to remove the blood clot that's causing the stroke.
Exactly. It's like a tiny mesh tube that's threaded through the blocked blood vessel to grab the clot and restore blood flow to the brain.
That's incredible. Are there not a lot of stent retrievers on the market already?
There are, but Preset is special because of its closed ring design.
What's so special about that?
The closed ring design is really important because it helps prevent the clot from breaking apart during retrieval, which could cause even more damage.
That makes a lot of sense. So it sounds like Wallaby is doing some really innovative things in the stroke treatment space.
They are. And here's where it gets even more interesting. They're one of only 3 companies worldwide that has this special coating on their flow diverters and stent retrievers called HPC.
HPC, what's that stand for?
Hydrophilic polymer coating. And it's a real game changer. Basically, it mimics the body's natural glycocalyx.
Okay, I'm not a doctor. What's the glycocalyx?
It's a super thin, slippery layer that lines the inside of your blood vessels and prevents blood clots from forming. HPC mimics this natural layer, which means that blood clots are less likely to form on the device itself.
Wow, so fewer blood clots, which means fewer complications for the patient, right?
Exactly. And it also means patients may not need to be on as many blood thinners, which can have some pretty serious side effects.
That's incredible. This HPC coating sounds like a huge breakthrough.
It really does have the potential to be. And they have the data to back it up.
Oh, tell me more.
They have a whole bunch of clinical data that shows just how safe and effective HPC is. And they've got even more trials in the works, like the coating and DART trials, which are collecting even more evidence.
That's amazing. They're really committed to proving that this technology works.
They are. It's clear they're in it for the long haul.
So they have this incredible technology, a great product lineup. How are they translating all of this into success?
Well, that's where their global commercial strategy comes in.
And what does that strategy look like?
They're going after multiple markets all at the same time with a very specific plan for each one.
Smart. Where do they stand in the U.S. market? It's got to be a tough one to crack.
You're telling me. But they're going all in. They're really building up their sales team in the U.S. to cover more ground.
It's a good strategy, especially since the U.S. market has such high pricing and profit margins.
Exactly. And they're also going to be launching their new flow diverters in the U.S. soon, which should give them another boost.
What about Europe? Are they doing anything there?
Oh, yeah. They're leveraging their acquisition of Phenox GmbH to expand even more in Europe.
Phenox GmbH.
Yeah, they're a German company that Wallaby acquired.
Smart move. That gives Wallaby a strong foothold in the European market, right?
Exactly. Plus, they get a ready-made distribution network. 2 birds, 1 stone.
What about other regions? Any plans for Asia?
Definitely. They'll really be making moves in Asia, too. In Japan, they've partnered with Japan Lifeline, a major distributor there.
Another smart partnership.
Right. And they're aiming for market leadership in China.
Wow, they really are going global. But can they handle this much growth?
That's a great question. And the answer is, we'll get to that a bit later.
Okay, I'm on the edge of my seat.
For now, let's just say that they've put a lot of work into building a really strong foundation for their operations. They've got manufacturing facilities in Ireland, Germany, and China, on top of their multiple R&D centers.
Okay, so they definitely haven't neglected the operational side of things.
Definitely not. Everything seems very strategically planned for long-term growth, which is exciting to see.
So they've got a solid foundation, but what about the specifics? Let's talk about some of their standout products and technologies.
Okay, let's start with that HPC technology we were talking about. I think it has the potential to be revolutionary in stroke treatment.
It definitely sounds promising. Let's dive in.
So HPC, it's pretty amazing stuff. Remember how we talked about it mimicking the body's natural glycolytics?
Yeah, creating a surface that's less likely to cause blood clots, right?
Right. You see, with the older stents and flow diverters, patients often need to take multiple blood thinners to prevent clotting.
And that can be a problem because blood thinners can cause bleeding. Right?
Exactly. But with HPC, the device itself is less likely to trigger a blood clot. So patients might only need one antiplatelet therapy, which means a much lower risk of bleeding complications.
That makes a lot of sense, especially for older patients or people who are already at risk of bleeding.
Exactly. HPC could be a real game changer for those patients.
It sounds really promising, but do they have any data to back up these claims about HPC?
Oh, absolutely. They have a ton of clinical data showing that HPC is both safe and effective.
Like what? What kind of data are we talking about?
Well, for example, one study showed that their HPC-coated P64 flow diverter, when used with just one blood thinner, was just as safe and effective as uncoated flow diverters used with two blood thinners.
Wow, that's impressive. So they're really proving the value of this technology.
They are, and they're not stopping there. They've got these ongoing trials, like the coding and DART trials, to gather even more evidence.
That's great to hear. So it sounds like they have a lot going for them. Let's talk a little bit about their growth strategy. I mean, they're clearly aiming high, but how are they actually going to achieve these goals?
Well, they're using both organic and inorganic growth strategies.
Organic and inorganic. Can you break that down for me?
Sure. So organic growth means expanding their existing business, like growing their sales team and optimizing their operations.
So like doing more of what they're already doing, but better, right?
Exactly. And then there's inorganic growth, which means things like acquisitions.
Acquisitions, so buying other companies.
Yeah, to fill in some gaps in their product portfolio or enter new segments of the market.
Makes sense. I feel like that's a pretty common growth strategy in the medical device industry.
Oh yeah, definitely. It's much faster than trying to develop everything in-house.
So acquisitions are part of the plan, but are they investing in R&D as well, for the future?
Oh, absolutely. They're putting a lot of money into R&D. They have a very active pipeline. I think we mentioned this earlier. Over 30 new products are expected to launch in the next few years.
Wow, that's a lot. Anything really exciting in the pipeline?
Definitely. They're doing some really cool stuff.
Yeah.
For example, they're working on biodegradable products.
Biodegradable, like a stent that dissolves after it's done its job.
Exactly. Imagine that no need for a permanent implant. Pretty cool, huh?
That is really cool. What else?
They're also expanding their vasospasm product line.
Vasospasm, that's when the blood vessels narrow after a hemorrhagic stroke.
You got it. They're developing new devices to treat that.
Wow, it sounds like they're really thinking ahead.
Oh, definitely. And get this, they're even considering using their existing technologies to treat other things, not just neurovascular conditions.
Yes. Like what?
They're looking into things like peripheral vascular disease, abdominal aortic aneurysms, and even coronary artery disease.
Wow, they're really branching out. So big plans, lots of research and development, potential acquisitions. It all sounds great, but let's be real. Can they afford all of this?
That's the million-dollar question, right? And it's especially interesting since we're looking at investment banking materials.
Right, which usually means a company's trying to raise money or maybe even sell itself.
Exactly. And these documents definitely suggest that they're gearing up for something big.
Okay, so let's get down to the numbers. What are some of the highlights from their financial summary?
Well, first of all, their revenue growth has been absolutely phenomenal.
But revenue isn't everything? Are they actually profitable?
That's the good news. They're projecting to hit break-even EBITDA.
Okay, but where is this growth coming from?
Well, in the U.S., it's all about new product launches, like that preset Stent Retriever, and expanding into new hospitals and practices. Plus, they're launching their new Flow Diverters in the U.S. soon.
Makes sense. And what about Europe? They just acquired Phenox, right?
Yeah, so in Europe, they're really focusing on expanding their presence in markets outside of Germany. They want to grow in places like the UK, Italy, and France.
And how are they going to do that?
By introducing new products and, of course, leveraging those existing relationships that they got through Phenox.
Gotcha. And what about Asia? Any specific plans for those markets?
In Japan, Their growth is tied to their partnership with Japan Lifeline. They want to eventually launch their entire product line in Japan.
And in China?
In China, they're going for the gold. They want to be the market leader.
Ambitious. How do they plan to achieve that?
By using their cost advantages, navigating the, sometimes complex regulatory landscape there, and just really expanding their network of hospitals.
Okay, so it seems like they have a solid plan for each region. But what about the products themselves? Are there any specific products they're banking on?
Well, they expect the Avenir Coil System to keep performing well, and their P64 and P48 Flow Diverters should become big moneymakers once they launch in new markets like the US and China.
And what about those new products they have in development, like the biodegradable stents?
Some of those are still in the early stages, but they could be launching some of those game-changing products in the next few years.
I mean, it all sounds really impressive, but I have to admit I'm always a little skeptical about these long-term projections.
I hear you. I mean, a lot can change in a few years. But what's really striking about these documents is how detailed their financial planning is. They've really done their homework and thought everything through.
So it's not just wishful thinking. They have a real plan based on a good understanding of the market. But a company is only as good as its people, right? What can you tell me about the team behind all of this?
From what I can see, Wallaby has put together a world-class team with a lot of experience in the medical device industry.
Okay, so experienced leadership, but what about their backgrounds? What kind of leadership styles do they have?
Well, we don't have their full resumes or anything, but there are some clues in these documents. For example, their CEO, James Lago, has a history of leading high-growth medical device companies, especially those focused on global expansion and acquisitions.
Which is exactly what Wallaby is doing. And what about their R&D team? They seem to be doing some pretty cutting-edge work.
Their chief technology officer, Earl Bardsley, has a long history of developing groundbreaking medical devices, particularly for stroke treatment. He seems to be really good at identifying unmet needs and then finding innovative solutions for them.
That's fantastic. What about the rest of the team? Their sales force, their engineers, the manufacturing teams?
Well, the materials really emphasize Wallaby's commitment to building a strong and diverse team with people from all over the world and expertise in lots of different areas.
That's great to hear. Sounds like they're building a culture of innovation and collaboration, which is so important in a fast-paced industry like this.
Exactly. And they're also investing in their employees, providing opportunities for professional development and growth. For example, they have these really comprehensive training programs for their sales team to make sure they're up to date on all the latest products and technologies.
That makes sense. They're selling pretty complex products, so their sales team needs to be top-notch.
Definitely. And on top of that, the documents really emphasize the importance of strong customer relationships. They want to build those long-term partnerships with physicians, hospitals, and distributors.
So it sounds like they're taking a really strategic and customer-centric approach, but what about the overall culture of the company? What's it like to work at Wallaby?
Well, the documents don't go into a ton of detail about that. We can get a sense of their culture from what they do say. It seems like a very positive and supportive environment focused on innovation, collaboration, and excellence.
Sounds like a great place to work.
It does, and that's an important thing to consider when you're assessing a company. A strong culture can be a huge advantage.
Okay, so they have a great team, a strong culture, amazing products, and a really ambitious growth strategy. But let's be realistic. What are some of the challenges they might face along the way?
Well, I think one of the biggest challenges is going to be competition. I mean, the neurovascular device market is already pretty crowded with some major players like Medtronic, Stryker, Terumo, and Johnson & Johnson.
Yeah, those are some big names to compete with. How does Wallaby plan to hold its own against those giants?
Their main differentiator is innovation. They're putting a lot of money into R&D, developing unique technologies like their HPC coating and their special Stent Retriever designs. They're also focusing on niche markets, the ones that are difficult to treat with traditional devices.
So they're playing to their strengths, focusing on areas where they have a clear advantage. Smart move. But what about regulation? The medical device industry is heavily regulated, especially when you're operating in multiple countries like Wallaby is.
Oh, yeah. Regulation is definitely something they're going to have to keep a close eye on. It could be a real headache, and any missteps could be costly.
Absolutely. And speaking of costs, what about their manufacturing and distribution capabilities? Can they ramp up production quickly enough to meet the demand if they grow as fast as they're projecting?
That's a great question. It's going to be really important for them to manage their supply chain effectively and make sure they can get their products to the patients who need them.
So a lot of moving parts to keep track of.
Definitely. And let's not forget about the financial risks. They're burning through cash to fuel their growth, so they're going to need to secure additional funding at some point.
Right. It's all about finding that balance between aggressive growth and responsible financial management.
Exactly. And let's not forget about the inherent risks of medical devices.
What do you mean?
Well, there's always the possibility of product defects or complications, even lawsuits.
That's true. You can never eliminate all the risks.
Right. But Wallaby seems to be aware of these risks and taking steps to mitigate them, which is good to see.
So overall, it seems like Wallaby is a company with a lot of potential, but also some significant challenges ahead of them.
Exactly. It's going to be really interesting to see how they navigate all of this in the coming years.
It's going to be fascinating to see how this all plays out. But let's zoom out for a moment and consider the bigger picture. How does Wallaby's story fit into the broader trends shaping the neurovascular device market? What are the forces driving innovation and growth in this field?
Well, I think one of the biggest trends is the aging global population. People are living longer, which means more people are developing age-related diseases, like stroke.
So the demand for stroke treatments is only going to increase in the coming years.
Exactly. And not only are there more patients, but patients and physicians are also increasingly looking for less invasive treatment options.
Yeah, procedures that are less traumatic, with faster recovery times and fewer complications.
Exactly. And Wallaby's focus on minimally invasive devices puts them in a great position to capitalize on this trend.
It's like they're riding a wave of demographic change and technological advancement.
They are. But on top of that, there are also some really exciting technological advancements that are poised to disrupt the market even further.
Ooh, okay, like what? I'm intrigued.
Well, robotics is one area that's generating a lot of buzz. We're talking about tiny little robots that can be inserted into blood vessels to deliver treatment with incredible precision.
Wow, tiny robots doing brain surgery. That sounds like something out of a sci-fi movie.
It does, doesn't it? But it's not that far off. There are already companies developing these robotic platforms, so it's only a matter of time before they become more widely available.
So if robotics takes off, Wallaby might need to adapt its strategy to stay ahead of the curve, right?
Definitely. They're going to have to keep an eye on these new technologies and figure out how to incorporate them into their own product development plans.
What about artificial intelligence? Is AI playing a role in the neurovascular device market?
Oh yeah, AI is already having a big impact on healthcare in general, and it's starting to make its way into neurovascular interventions too.
Like how?
Well, for example, AI algorithms are being used to analyze medical images. This can help doctors diagnose strokes more accurately and plan treatments more effectively.
So AI can help with both diagnosis and treatment.
Exactly. And it goes even further than that. AI can also be used to develop personalized treatments, therapies that are tailored to each individual patient's needs.
Wow, that's really cool. So imagine a future where we have tiny robots guided by AI delivering personalized stroke treatments.
That's the future we're moving towards. And companies like Wallaby are right there on the cutting edge.
It's an exciting time to be in this field, for sure. But let's talk about something else that's changing the healthcare landscape. The shift towards value-based healthcare.
Yes, that's a big one. Remember, value-based healthcare is about rewarding healthcare providers for achieving better outcomes for their patients.
Right. It's not about the quantity of procedures, but the quality of the results.
Exactly. So instead of getting paid for every stent or coil they use, hospitals and doctors are increasingly being rewarded for things like reducing readmissions, preventing complications, and improving patients' overall quality of life.
Which makes a lot of sense. But how does this trend impact a medical device company like Wallaby?
Well, it means that companies need to prove that their devices actually improve patient outcomes. It's not enough to just talk about fancy features. They need data to back it up.
So they need to show that their devices are not only innovative, but also cost-effective and lead to better results for patients.
Exactly. And that's where clinical data becomes really important. Wallaby's investment in clinical trials and their focus on demonstrating the real-world value of their products will be really valuable in this new landscape.
So they're not just developing great products, they're also gathering the evidence to prove that those products make a real difference in patients' lives and contribute to a more efficient healthcare system.
Precisely. And that's really smart because it positions them well in a healthcare system that's increasingly focused on value.
It's like they're thinking several steps ahead, anticipating the needs of the market and adapting their strategy accordingly.
Exactly. And that's what makes Wallaby so interesting. They're not just reacting to changes in the market, they're hoping to shape the future of stroke treatment.
It's amazing how Wallaby is weaving together cutting-edge technology, a keen business sense, and a genuine desire to make a difference in people's lives.
That's what makes their story so compelling. They're not just chasing profits, they're working to solve a real problem that affects millions of people worldwide.
Speaking of solving problems, you mentioned earlier that value-based healthcare is a growing trend in the medical device industry. Can you remind us what that means and how it impacts a company like Wallaby?
Absolutely. Value-based healthcare is all about shifting the focus from the volume of procedures to the quality of outcomes. It's about rewarding healthcare providers for delivering better results for patients, not just for the number of stents or coils they use.
So it's about incentivizing doctors and hospitals to prioritize treatments that truly improve patients' lives, not just those that generate the most revenue.
Exactly. Instead of getting paid for each individual procedure, healthcare providers are increasingly being rewarded for reducing readmissions, preventing complications, and improving patients' overall quality of life.
That makes a lot of sense. It aligns everyone's incentives with the best interests of the patient. But how does this trend impact a medical device company like Wallaby?
It creates both challenges and opportunities. On the one hand, it puts pressure on companies to demonstrate the real-world value of their products. They can't just tout technical features. They need to prove that their devices actually lead to better outcomes for patients, like fewer complications, faster recoveries, and a higher quality of life.
So it's not enough to say, hey, our stents are the coolest and most innovative. They have to show that their stents actually make a difference in patients' lives and contribute to a more efficient healthcare system.
Precisely, and that requires robust clinical data. Fortunately, Wallaby seems to understand this. They've invested heavily in clinical trials, and they emphasize the strong clinical evidence supporting their devices' safety and efficacy.
That's great to hear. They're backing up their claims with hard data. But you mentioned opportunities, too. How can Wallaby actually benefit from this shift towards value-based healthcare?
If they can convincingly demonstrate that their devices lead to better outcomes and lower overall healthcare costs, they'll be in a much stronger position to negotiate favorable reimbursement rates with payers. Hospitals and physicians will be more likely to choose their products if they can see the tangible benefits, both for their patients and for their bottom line.
So it's about making a compelling business case, not just a clinical one. They have to show that their products not only work well, but also contribute to a more efficient and cost-effective healthcare system.
Exactly. And Wallaby seems to be doing just that. They highlight their cost-effectiveness, emphasizing features like their HPC coating, which could reduce the need for expensive blood thinners and potentially lower the risk of costly complications.
That's a smart strategy. They're aligning their products with the evolving priorities of the healthcare system. It seems like they're really thinking ahead and anticipating the needs of the market.
Absolutely. And that's a key takeaway from this deep dive. Wallaby isn't just developing innovative medical devices. They're developing them with a deep understanding of the market, the evolving needs of patients, and the changing dynamics of the healthcare industry.
It's like they're playing a multi-dimensional chess game, anticipating all the possible moves and counter moves. It's impressive.
It is, and it speaks to the depth of their strategy and the talent of their team. They're not just reacting to the market, they're shaping it.
Well, this has been an incredible deep dive. We've explored Wallaby's innovative products, their ambitious strategies, their financial projections, the team behind their success, the risks and challenges they face, and even the broader trends shaping the neurovascular device market. It's been a whirlwind tour.
It has, and I think we've gained a much deeper understanding of this intriguing company and their potential to make a real impact on the world.
Before we wrap up, I want to bring it back to what matters most. The people whose lives are touched by stroke every single day. It's easy to get caught up in the business side of things, but ultimately, this is about improving human health and well-being.
Absolutely. Behind all the numbers and projections are real people who are facing incredible challenges. Stroke can be a devastating disease, robbing individuals of their independence, their ability to communicate, and even their lives.
Companies like Wallaby, with their unwavering commitment to innovation and their passion for improving patient outcomes, offer a glimmer of hope in the face of this daunting challenge.
They represent the power of human ingenuity to find solutions to even the most complex medical problems. Their work has the potential to alleviate suffering, restore function, and give people back their lives.
That's a powerful and inspiring thought to end on.
It is. And it's a reminder that even in the world of business and finance, there's always a human element at play.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the world of Wallaby Medical Holdings. We hope you've enjoyed this journey as much as we have.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep diving deep.